Excuse me. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and kick off our pre-commission agenda. I don't have anything to share at this time, but I do have a question and not question, an ask of my commissioners that will put item number 5 on the consent agenda. And I asked that we put it as number 1 on the regular agenda. Staff are going to explain an element in there that needs our attention and something that's separated. So that's my only request, but any housekeeping items or other questions on the agenda?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I do have some questions for staff on item number 6 on the consent agenda. I don't see a reason to move it off of the consent agenda. I just want to get a little more information on it.
Absolutely. So go ahead.
All right. Well, in looking through the staff report, the surplus property auction results seem, disappointing to say the least. Did we not advertise it very well? What can we attribute that to? Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. And I think the total, just the exercise equipment was probably in the range of $40,000 worth, and the whole lot went for $4,000. I recognize this is just kind of a windfall in some respects, stuff that was just left there, but did we not advertise very well? What was the reason for poor performance?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, we went through a full RFP process to select an auction house. That we had one bidder, and they did advertise for a number of weeks, but the items were what we received is what bids were put in. The option for the commission is either to approve that sale at those prices, or and then to approve disposal of the other items. We needed to go through this process legally to make sure that we are following proper disposal requirements. But if we can go through other options to try and dispose of those, if you would like to reject the bids. Anything below fair market value is it's at the discretion of the commission to approve. So we believe that they advertised it appropriately. That was on the auction house and their effort. They get paid by a percentage of the sale. And so the effort that they put behind that, but ultimately the big item was the cubicles upstairs, which based on conversations we've had, there's not a lot of value in those. They are praised to have some value, but not a lot of interest in reusing that type of cubicle.
Well, and I recognize that used goods, don't generally, draw large value, and I recognize that. But what's interesting is that I presume that would be reflected in the appraised value. That here are some used goods, here's their appraised value, and when our actual sale price is like 1/100th of the appraised value, that kind of strikes me as a bit odd. I don't know. I suppose if the rest of the commission is inclined to say, it was a windfall anyway, it was just leftover stuff, and we didn't need it, and we don't really need any money for it. I guess we go ahead and accept the sale, but I'd be curious if any other commissioners have different opinions on that.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yes, and this is just from experience. And I'll give you one example. Facebook Marketplace is filled with stuff like this, and it's all free. Gym equipment, all kinds of this. You could pick up good, almost commercial quality gym equipment for nothing.
And a
So I
large
wou- I
number of
wouldn't worry about
televisions for
this.
$90, which was, how many were there? There were something like
30.
30 televisions, $90 for the whole lot. That's again, admittedly, they're used goods, but okay. Well, I don't want to make a big deal out of this because it's, again, we're getting rid of stuff that we don't need. It's unfortunate that we can't get a little more value out of it.
Madam President,
Commissioner
I noticed the same thing. It's planned obsolescence. All this equipment is created with the understanding that it'll be obsolete a year or two later, so we can sell the latest version. And as a result, the secondary market is pretty low. And so that's one of the reasons why I do most of my Christmas shopping at Deseret or St. Vincent de Paul and the Youth Ranch.
Okay. Thanks, Director. If there's no other questions, Director Head.
Thank you. Commission, it's a pleasure to be here today to visit with you. We want to start out today just recognizing an important event that happened this week, the birthday of Commissioner Goldthorpe. He was out fishing. We got a good picture from him, so thought I'd share that in recognition of his special day. We do have something.
Well, you'd have to get rid of my face there, but there were two sturgeon on at the same time, and that was very interesting, landing two 8-foot fish at once.
Exciting.
We do have some key lime pie in recognition of that we can enjoy during the break. Commission, in the spirit of how we approach all things and build safe, build together, build more, I did want to just take a moment as we begin this today to recognize what day it is. Today being Patriot Day, a day in which we remember the attack on 9/11 and the loss of lives that occurred there. It's important to remember and as we look at this and look back at this, the impact of hate and the impact that hate can have and that division. We see a lot of that in our country today. The days after 9/11 were filled with a lot of unity. Right? In the midst of trial, we can have great things that happen. And in the midst of challenges, we can come together. And just wanted to take a moment in recognition of the spirit of build together to just remember what today is and what it stands for. We also wanted to share some wonderful news this week. You've all heard presentations from Compass over the last year. As they have been working on the Regional Safety Action Plan. We received news just this week that as a follow-up to that plan was intended to prepare us to receive additional federal funding for safety improvements. Compass received an award under the Safe Streets for All program of $276,000 to prioritize implementation of leading pedestrian intervals and accessible pedestrian signals. And the other countermeasures identified within that plan within the 2-county, Ada and Canyon County area. We're excited about this. We believe this is a good add-on and will continue to help us in building out that target goal of having leading pedestrian intervals at all intersections, signalized intersections in the county. And we will be a participant in this process as it rolls forward. As they do that prioritization, staff will be fully engaged in this. And we're excited to have that. Additional exciting breaking news. We received word from the Idaho Office of Highway Safety that we received a grant to support our Let's Get There Safely campaign. So annually, the commission sets aside about $15,000. We use this for different types of giveaways, different ad campaigns, public service announcements, other things like that to try and encourage safety. Just some examples here. From our webpage of things that we focus on. We received some additional funding. This year's program emphasis is on being visible at night, trying to make sure that people are able to be seen. And so we're excited to have that additional funding. We hear that often the funding, the Idaho Office of Highway Safety, they don't spend it all and turn it back. So we see this as a good opportunity to begin a good partnership in supporting these types of campaigns, these education outreach. We already try and work with the state on getting our message across on being safe and education that way. And so we're excited to have found this partnership and received some funding to support it. And on the topic of Build More, just wanted to publicly make sure that everyone's aware that the Eagle and Lake Hazel project will begin next week. The closure will start on Monday. And so that will be a big project that will go on for quite some time, but we're excited to have that connection down to Lake Hazel completed, and this will be just the first step in doing that, and that closure will help accelerate that. So we're excited to get going on that. Coming up today, you'll have the opportunity to hear from staff on our integrated 5-year work plan, the public and agency comments that we received, and the response in that plan on what we're incorporating. Also, just wanted to give a heads up. Next week, we will have a work session. We're coming back now after a little bit of a time as staff has been working through this on the ACHD speed management policy revisions. Bringing back a conversation for next week. Want to make sure that we're on track, but feel really good about what staff's been able to identify and bring forward on that. And then highlighting some of the other upcoming events with our adoption hearing coming on September 25th for the integrated 5-year work plan. With that, Commission, I'll stand for any questions, and if there are none, we can say, let them eat cake, right?
Or pie.
Or pie.
I just want to say thank you, Ryan, to you and the team for securing those grants. It's really exciting.
The team does wonderful work. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for the director? All right, we'll be at ease for 19 minutes. All right, good afternoon. It's now 12 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome folks joining us in person and online. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to adopt the agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney,
I move to remove item number 5 from the consent agenda and move it to the regular agenda and approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
I'll second that motion, and if we could make it item number 1 on the regular agenda.
I agree.
it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so that leaves us with our first item, which was previously item number 5 on the consent agenda. It's the impact fee deferral agreement for New Path to Affordable Housing. Ms. Megan Anderson.
Good afternoon, Madam President and members of the commission. I'm Megan Anderson, the Impact Fee Administrator here at ACHD. The staff memo I submitted for the New Path to Affordable Housing project included 2 requests from the developer, and that developer is the Pacific Companies. The first request was a deferral agreement asking that ACHD's impact fees in the amount of $111,498 be deferred until they receive certificate of occupancy for the project. And this is in line with the previous deferral agreements that we've presented for other projects to the commission. The second part of the request was a new request to us, and it was signature of a subordination agreement, which would have made ACHD's potential lien position in the event of a default by the developer subordinate to the liens of their various lenders that they have for this project. Yesterday, the developer informed me that they spoke to their financial team and they were able to remove ACHD from that subordination request. So staff would request that the commission consider the approval of the deferral agreement for the project only, as there's no longer a need for that subordination agreement. And we do have a representative from the Pacific Companies on Zoom if you have any questions about the project or want to know more about it.
Thanks, Megan. Commissioners? Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
I have some questions for staff
Sure.
first. This
for it.
is an issue that we've talked about in the past, where we have periodically we get requests for a deferral of impact fees, and we don't have any sort of standard criteria yet. And it was my understanding that our I don't know if our general counsel's office was working on it, or in any case, staff was working on coming up with a set of standard criteria by which we could judge these. And this I think makes sense because, for example, we had a while ago a impact fee deferral request from a hotel project in downtown Boise, a major, top tier hotel name requesting a deferral of impact fees. And here we have, an affordable housing situation, and the one makes more sense to me than the other, but we still don't have. And so I'd like to know the status of having some kind of regular criteria by which we can judge these things to decide who gets a deferral and who doesn't.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I'll let our legal counsel speak to any development of that. I think after we looked at it, it was formalizing a policy was maybe not the best process, but what we did look at is we've given guidance to staff that what we'll bring forward are our requests where the city is also deferring their impact fees. So in this case, City of Boise is also deferring their impact fees. And so being a partner in that situation, we believe that those are appropriate to bring forward. In general, we don't recommend these types of activities, but in this case, to be a partner with the city, we believe it's a good activity. Steve, anything else you'd add?
Madam President, Commissioners, Steve Price, General Counsel for the record. Well, when we discussed this last time, I heard that it was suggested that we develop a policy. I didn't get any clear direction from the commission, and Brian's point was something that we discussed. You know, the affordable housing is a issue that actually grants a waiver within the impact fee program, except that we would have to compensate that with our general fund revenue. But it's one of the few areas that the impact fee, the development impact fee, encourages governmental entities under that definition to work with affordable housing. But if you want, we most certainly can develop criteria if I get a clear indication. I think the idea is that staff would be more tempered in bringing these forward to you unless it was had been advanced with a city partner on a waiver of impact fees. So I don't think you've seen anything since that time. And in the last time impact fee deferral, this is the first one, and it's solely because it's affordable housing and it's to mirror what our city partners have done.
Well, if I may, I personally, I would like to see an official policy simply because the most recent one we had before this, as I mentioned, was for a hotel. I think it was a Marriott hotel being built downtown. And I look at that and I say to myself, you know, why would we grant impact fee deferral for a large multinational corporation building a for-profit business, installation here in the city? And I'm inclined not necessarily to say that if the city is deferring impact fees, that we should necessarily follow along, because, well, that was a case in which the city of Boise did defer impact fees, and I don't think it made any sense in that kind of situation. So I personally would like to see a uniform policy that we can apply. And so I'd like to hear from the rest of the commission on that.
Madam President, if I may, the one thing is that the commission ultimately gets, if we bring them forward, you guys have the discretion to say yay or nay. So that's why this is here. I'm happy to develop a policy. So that's up to you folks.
But one of the challenges is that if we don't have a uniform policy, then I think we're susceptible to a charge of favoritism. And I'd like to avoid that if possible. I'd like to have so that, the staff can say, here are the criteria. These are met. These aren't met. Here's the decision. Because yes, we'll have to make the decision in any case. But it seems to me a set of uniform criteria that we can apply each time will give us a basis for that decision to avoid any appearance of, favoritism to any entity over another.
Commissioner Hanson?
Oh, yeah, I think there's some rationale to at least start the process of both applying a criteria for deferral, but also for compensation. And it really has to do with trip generation. And I think the justification, both for hotels and housing, these are people who are not going to be using the roads that the impact fees are going to be paying for. We're extracting money from these developers in order to pay for expansion of roads that the users are not likely to be doing. And I would think the trip generation from this project in particular, being right next to New Path Housing, New Path Housing has a track record, and thank God it's there. Those folks are not homeless because of what's provided there. And this next facility, which is right next door, just to the west of it, is going to be basically an expansion of that so that we don't have homelessness. Folks who don't have homes, chances are they don't use their car to drive out to the west side of the county. They live in it somewhere. So we should have some sort of criteria that the waiver should be, we should consider waiving impact fees based upon less than average or less than 30% of trip generation of an average, housing development. So that, I think that would be really good. It wouldn't be, deferral is relatively insignificant. We're just talking about the interest that might be earned. It's really about the application of general funds. Because absent this, there was a really good presentation, and I would encourage you, I don't know if it was recorded by the DBA last week. They highlighted issues of housing and how much of a margin, tiny little margin, tips difference between somebody who invests in affordable housing and someone who doesn't. And if that margin is impact fees that ACHD applies, then that tips it in the wrong direction. So I think we do need to work on this, maybe less about a policy criteria as much as of an agreement with each of our city partners so that they help to, between the two of us, we can help cover the costs that until the statutes change, we're forced to extract from these developers who are attempting to address a huge demand for affordable housing in our valley.
Thanks, Commissioner Hanson. I think kind of going back to the item at hand, I think I'm in full support of your request, Commissioner McKinney, and kind of exploring what a policy would look like. I think that we could talk more offline about the sequencing or how we want to schedule that, and open to input on how you'd like to structure that. So, but any questions on the actual specific items, on the item itself, Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Not on the actual item itself, but I am not in favor of developing a policy for this. I think the fatter we make our policy manual, the less the reason there is to have a commission.
Okay. So is there a motion? If there's no other questions, a motion on this item?
Madam President,
Commissioner Hanson.
I would move to approve the request for the deferral of the impact fee assessment. The resolution
Without the subordination.
without the subordination. Yeah, I assume that was two separate motions, but if it's going to be incorporated into one, no, without the need for a subordination clause.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so that's it for our regular agenda. Next is public communications. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission at this time?
We do have Mark in the audience.
Welcome, Mark. Please state your full name and address for the record, sir. And you'll have 3
President
minutes.
and Commissioners, my name is Mark Seeley. I live at 11040 West Amity Road, and I'm in the area between 5 Mile and Cloverdale where the road improvement project is being planned, and I have some items to address regarding the plans. And I have also a petition signed by 39 people who live on that segment of the road who are in basic agreement with the comments I'm going to make about the impacts. And in addition to the impacts, I have some mitigations that I'd like to recommend for the staff to consider in this design. So I will start with as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm misstating something as to the my understanding of what this design entails. It's going to be 3 11-foot wide lanes, and there'll be 2 10-foot wide sidewalk bike lanes on either side, one on either side, total of 20 feet. There's going to be 2 7-foot wide curb and buffer zones. There will be storm drain facilities to collect runoff from the paved areas and divert it to the creek. I think it's 8 Mile Creek, if I'm not mistaken. And in that 1 mile segment, there will be one pedestrian crossing. And I believe that's going to be at Reaver Ridge or right near Reaver Ridge intersection. The total width right now of the paved section of Amity Road is about 22 feet, plus or minus, from fog line to fog line. The new or the proposed paved section is going to be 56 feet wide. That's like, what is it, 140, 150% increase in paved area. So it's quite a bit increase in the amount of pavement in the area. And that has some impacts that I'll talk about in just a second. 154% increase is what it is. So I'm going to give you a list of the impacts that I understand from my looking at the design and living there, making observations, talking to residents who live in that area. And before I go into that, let me just divert slightly and bring to the attention of the commission that this section of Amity Road is not the same as every other 1 mile section of Amity Road. This is a rural residential area with a substantial number of homes that front on the road. If we go towards Amity School, not so many homes there. There are developments that are already set back with buffers and sound walls or fences. There's the school there and a church there. So that segment is quite a bit different than between 5 Mile and Cloverdale. And then on the other side of Cloverdale, going south, that section of Amity is different also. There's existing newer developments there with setbacks. There's still open land, farmland that's not developed. So putting this type of a road section in those areas is relatively easy with minimal impacts. The area that I live in between 5 Mile and Cloverdale is substantially different. So this design does not fit. And I'll go into the reasons why. First of all, with this design, there's no place for people to park in front of my house. So when I have visitors and guests, I have a limited amount in my driveway where people could park. And I'm not unique in that sense. There's other homeowners are similar to mine in that regard. Some people have bigger driveways and they can accommodate parking. We cannot. Okay, now if I go over a time
Yep,
limit or
go-
something.
yep, go for it.
Another really critical element of this design that I don't think is considered is the impact on the groundwater. Most all of the homes in this area are on wells, and most of the wells are in the range of 80 to about 110 feet deep. We are in an unconfined aquifer. The aquifer is recharged by surface runoff primarily. So this big section of pavement with the storm drain is going to take our recharge away. Our wells are going to go dry, and we will be faced with $40,000 costs to replace our wells with deeper wells, or we'll have to pay a similar amount to get connected to the city water. So it's a very significant economic impact to the homeowners here, and everybody is worried about that.
Do you mind just summarizing your final points?
Yeah, I'm on number 2 and I got 7 total. So can I ask a question and stop the clock?
Sure.
Okay, my question on this point is, has this groundwater issue been considered in the design of this road?
Diane, do you mind like sharing just a little bit more? Does this mic work over here? Yeah, Diane, do you mind just answering that question at that one?
Madam President, Commissioners, Diane Bevins, Deputy Director of Projects for the record. Yes, with our projects, we will be collecting the stormwater and then putting it in facilities that infiltrate back into the ground.
Yeah, and my question on that is, I know I talked to one of the homeowners who has been approached by to put a large catchment basement on their property to collect water from the roundabout. Well, that will recharge that specific area. But right now, if there's no recharge near my property and individual properties where our wells are, that recharge might not be significant enough to overcome this negative impact. So right now, the water runs off the road right in front of our property and goes into the gravel area. And we have ditches, irrigation ditches that during the summertime when the irrigation's running, those ditches cause infiltration and recharge of the groundwater. And as I see this design, those ditches are gonna have to be put in pipes. And with that happening, that recharge is gonna go away. So has that been taken into account?
Mr. Seeley, I would have to get my staff to provide more information, but this has never been an issue on any of our projects in the past. And if it's an aquifer, my engineering sense is it's a bigger area of recharge and not just parcel by parcel recharge of wells.
Well, it's true, it is an area-wide issue, but we're getting recharge close to where our wells are, and that's gonna go away. And since these are shallow wells, in our neighborhood, there's already been about 6 or 7 people that have had to drill deeper wells. This is just definitely not gonna help the situation. And so it's an economic impact that will affect us.
We'll be able to provide.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, just by way of further introduction, this gentleman's background is that of a geologist and engineer. So fortunately, he's not here, just asking stuff off the top of his head, but it's been better considered than most people in my district who come to visit with us, which is very rarely. So I'm grateful for you being here. I would ask that as we continue on with the development of this project, that he be focused on as a representative of that particular neighborhood so that they, through him, will be able to give their questions, that we'll be able to more fully consider their concerns. I'll make one comment about how a few years ago, this was envisioned to be a 5-lane road. And, we decided a long time ago, and I hope we stick to this, that Amity Road is going to be an exception to our 5 lanes east and west. So that 3, which should be the only way right now that we could configure the road to make it so that you and at your home could still have a ride in and ride out. Because if people had to stop in every lane to make a left turn, it would really hinder traffic. So that's what the middle lane, turning lane is for. But my question or request is that you allow yourself, since you're here representing others, to be the focus for our coming back to you folks with back and forth. Would that be okay?
Yeah, I would agree to that. If I could help in any way, I'd be happy to do that.
Great. Diane is absolutely a wonderful customer service focused engineer who I have a lot of confidence in and how she'll work with you. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah,
Thank you
Mark,
for that.
Mark, we'll take your petition, and I think it would be just a lot more efficient to share those questions directly with staff. And I appreciate you sharing.
Could I ask one more question?
If it's very specific,
Yeah,
yes.
This is down my list of impacts. I have a question as to why this design has 2 10-foot wide pathways. The Boise Greenbelt is 12 feet wide, and we get 20 feet of pavement for pedestrians and bicyclists. And I don't understand, and maybe somebody can explain, where all these people are going to come from walking down a road that's been stripped of trees and shade. Where are they coming from? Why are they there? On the Boise Greenbelt with 12 feet, we seem to do really good with lots of people. Why do we need 10 feet on each side?
And I think that's something that folks can speak to. So.
Madam President, Commissioners, again, Diane Bevins. It is very important for us to have facilities on both sides of an arterial roadway. So people aren't having to cross every time they need to get to the north or south side. We used to do 5-foot bike lane in the road and 5-foot sidewalk. So we just do 10 feet behind the curb as a safer facility for all users. But there is a school in this area, and crossing an arterial is the dangerous part of walking or biking. And so we have a complete streets policy and ordinance. It's included in every one of our projects that we have facilities on both sides of the road.
Okay,
Thank you.
I understand that. And who do I give this petition to?
Staff will grab it from you. Thank you for your time and coming today.
Also, you call me anytime and we can chat about any of these things and I can help as well.
Okay, thank you very much
sir.
for allowing me to speak.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission?
Yes, Miss Grace Lee is here.
Welcome, Ms. Lee. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Grace Lee, and I live on 6915 West Grand Rapids Drive, Meridian, Idaho. And I just want to thank everybody for all the work you do, because just trying to get to here, I had to go through a lot of hoops, and I could see the beautiful web you guys have to deal with in putting everything together. So I wanted to say I really appreciate it. I'm here because the I-16 has developed enough that we're actually, I live in the CBH community in the Dakota Creek, and my children go to Gem Prep Meridian North. So we're actually crossing that Meridian, McDermott, McMillan crossroad now that it's open and available with the freeway being developed as much as it is. And we're encountering some pedestrian problems. And I thought it was just my family, but then we discovered it was basically all of our community in that area. A lot of us are having issues. So we were hoping that that area could be connected into, I know there's a 5-year plan, but if we could expedite it a little bit, just because there's so much pedestrian traffic right now happening and there's not a lot of safety in place for the pedestrians that are there. I apologize for the rudimentariness. I thought the meeting was.
No, we
this
love
evening.
we love visuals.
I'll leave it right here, but for us specifically, we've been, whoa, where's my house? Okay, it's over here.
Ms. Lee, do you mind moving the microphone over to you just so folks home can hear you? You're
So
great.
there's a house right here, and so the sidewalk walk actually ends here, and then we walk into the street essentially to get to the sidewalk on this side. Now this has already been developed. This is Google Earth, so it's a little behind times. But there's no and then there's no safety crosswalks in the intersection itself. And there's just gravel here. And so I've kind of blown up all the photos of the traffic that we take. And so there's a lot of slipping in the gravel over here on the corner. The weeds are still kind of there. And then this area in front of these people's house a little bit into the community is actually slanted and it's very narrow. So walkers, walkers and bike riders and all of us were having some safety issues, and the traffic's been great. They've been very kind to us, but it's definitely a concern. And we were really hoping that this could be expedited, because if you look at the map, we have Gem Prep here, but we have Coal Valley Christian actually coming in right across from our community. We have Pleasant View Elementary School, and we have Owyhee High School. And all the pedestrians just from that little area even have been having to deal with this intersection. And we have a lot of communities there. And so, yeah, we were just wanting to bring it to your notice. I know this is not the meeting for it, and there's an adoption meeting as well, but we wanted to see if it could be, yeah. I'll just stop.
I really appreciate you coming and bringing that visual. Well, do you mind leaving that with
Nope,
us?
I will definitely leave it.
Thank you. And
Yes.
and just to clarify too, we can't take any action during public comment, but
Yes.
we will definitely have staff look into that as well.
Yeah, that's what I was told, is that it's not on the docs yet. So if I could bring it in and introduce it.
Absolutely.
So that's why I came.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldthorpe?
You know, the last place that I enjoy seeing people come with these kinds of suggestions is at the adoption meeting. Because then, to tell you the truth, it's too late.
Yeah.
So your being here is a breath of fresh air. It's wonderful. And you will have plenty of communication on this, and you will make a difference.
Okay, sounds good. And if there's anything I can do, there are a few parents that are kind of working with me and trying to get the word out and stuff. So if there's anything the community can do, we'll definitely do it. I did get a petition survey together as well, just to get it started. I only had a week, so it's like 50 people-ish. But yeah, so
That's great.
Great, thanks.
Thank
I
you.
just want to echo my
Commissioner
thanks.
Hanson?
I appreciate that. I have lots of folks in my district come to me with these community type programs that are critical because of the changes that are going on in their neighborhoods. And it sounds like you're in Commissioner McKinney's district, so work with him to get these aspects, these community program type aspects of that growth out there addressed through our program. Thank you.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Stacy?
We have some people online on Zoom, but I do not have any requests.
All right. Well, if there's no other public comment, the meeting is adjourned. We'll go into our post-commission agenda. We've got 2 work sessions. The first being the Linder Road, Pine Avenue, and Ustick Road concept study. This is a pre-adoption. It says request for adoption.
It's
That
not.
doesn't make sense.
No.
Open the gun.
Yeah.
Nope.
So just want to clarify that. But yes, welcome, Ms. Brooke Green. Oh, you're on mute.
It's really blurry. Let's see if that
Yeah,
fixes
there,
it. I'm not sure what's,
but we can hear you though. That's the good thing.
okay, as long as you can hear me and you'll see my presentation, I'll go ahead and start the presentation itself and make sure that it displays correctly. All right, can you see the presentation? Do you see the presentation mode or do you see the actual slides themselves?
We're seeing presentation mode.
All right, let's switch that. Is that better?
Yes, there you go.
All right, fabulous. Good afternoon. For the record, Brooke Green, Senior Transportation Planner within Plans and Projects. I want to say thank you for the opportunity. It's a privilege to be before you. Before I go into the presentation, however, I'd like to introduce Ben with HDR, who is in the auditorium today to provide any assistance in answering questions should they arise. I'm before you this afternoon to provide you a briefing on the Linder Pine to Ustick concept. My objective today is to highlight the concept development process as well as the preferred concept for the Linder Pine to Ustick corridor. Following today's presentation, the draft plan will be open to the public for 14 days for a comment period, and I'll be back before you for an evening presentation and adoption and public hearing for consideration. The project team objective when we started this was to implement an achieved improved corridor of a residential arterial road. This is to include enhancements for safety for bikes and pedestrians, as well as looking forward to achieving a level of traffic stress of 1 or 2. We also wanted to recognize very unique existing land use through the whole corridor. I want to take a moment to highlight the public engagement that took place as we brought this project to fruition. In particular, I want to highlight the targeted public outreach, the surveys and the PIMs, as well as the stakeholder engagement. We conducted presentations with the City Meridian Council, the City Transportation Committee. We met with the West Ada School District. In addition to that, several businesses along the corridor. We also invited ACHG's committees, their ADA, their BAC, and their PAG, which several of you attended, to do a walking tour of the corridor. Give us some feedback, give us some enhancement opportunities. Let us know what it is that they had, what their vision was for this corridor. We really enjoyed that evening out and certainly took some of that into consideration. But more importantly, I want to talk about the property owner engagement. As you recognize, as we've been before you on several occasions now, this project has significant impacts to adjacent property owners. We sent out 2 letters for all of the identified property owners that we anticipate would be impacted should one of these go forward. We started with 1 letter. If they didn't respond to that first letter for a meeting, we sent out a second letter. We conducted 61 plus meetings with the property owners, either virtually on an evening meeting with them and their family in their living room or here at ACHD. Overall, we engaged with 65% of the property owners. And it was not just once, but rather I met with them at sometimes up to 3 times, walking them through the process, walking them through the design of the concept, talking about the what ifs, and more importantly, talking about what the future holds for them should one of these concepts move forward. Before we go any further, I do just want to highlight the boundaries of this project. This project is no further north than West Ustick Road, no further south than West Pine Avenue. Local attractors along the corridor, you'll see them identified here. You've got Tolley Park, you've got Barbara Morgan Elementary School, and you've got the Meridian High School there at West Pine Avenue and Linder Road. ACHG program, this project is a part of our concept development program and in alignment with our integrated 5-year work plan approach and prioritization from our partner agencies. This project was identified by West Ada School District as their #1 request and identified by the City of Meridian as their #6 request. We kicked off this project in December of 2022. That was with our public outreach, our initial survey. In the 2 years that we have been at this project, we have met with you on several occasions. We presented to the Meridian Transportation Committee, the Meridian City Council, conducted several virtual open houses, and as I mentioned, several property owner engagements. We met most recently, our last engagement was with the City of Meridian on June 18th, and that brings us here 2 years later, September 11th, for a pre-adoption hearing. And as I mentioned, I'll be back before you on September 25th for adoption and the public hearing. We took 3 concepts this past December out to the public and invited them to weigh in. Concept 1 was a 3 lanes with a shared use road. Concept 2 was a standard 5 lanes. Concept 3 was 5 lanes with a shared use road. Following the public engagement, this was the preferred alternative moving forward at 45.6%, which is concept 2, the standard 5 lanes. In addition to that, the City of Meridian Transportation Committee weighed in support, as well as the City of Meridian Council. Linder Pine to Ustick, this is concept 2. I'm going to walk you through what this looks like, although you have seen this before. Take a moment to introduce it once again. You have concept 2, it's 5 lanes standard with multi-use pathway on both sides. You have 11-foot median islands with turn pockets and tree landscaping. You have 11-foot travel lanes throughout the whole corridor. I'm going to walk you through the project itself, make some highlights of some of the enhancements we're doing for bikes and pedestrians. In addition, I'm going to talk a little bit about the properties that are going to be impacted should this be the adopted concept. First and foremost, I want to draw your attention up here. This is where we're going to start. We're going to work our way north down Linder, but Pine Avenue, this is a local attractor here is the Meridian High School, just to help orient you. Our first enhancement along the corridor is this hybrid beacon. This is to help facilitate folks and children who are accessing Meridian High School. Follow along further north, you're going to come across our first installation of landscape tree medians. This has 2 purposes. It provides a little bit of friction through the corridor. In addition to that, we're utilizing these landscape medians to provide access management once this project moves forward. Continue along to the bottom of the screen. I just want to draw your attention to these yellow boxes. These yellow boxes represent properties. As a result, if this one moves forward, we will have to purchase. I also want to draw your attention to some of these properties that are bookends, that are sandwiched in between these 2. Do just want to highlight that we did some preliminary analysis on this, some studies, more particular, how far from the road or from the multi-use pathway back a curb it is to the house itself. These homes take access off adjacent streets. They don't back onto Linder. In addition, the 20-foot threshold is not achieved. And so that's where we're not having to purchase those homes. I also want to draw your attention to our enhancements for the existing low-stress bikeway there at West Sandy Slope Drive. In addition, to enhance that crossing, we're making a suggestion for a hybrid beacon installation. This will help facilitate folks who are utilizing that low-stress bikeway to navigate east and west through this corridor. Continuing along, we're going to go past Cherry Lane, and this is where we're going to start getting to the location where I consider the pinch point. This is the space between Sandalwood and Chateau Drive. Also want to just draw your attention quickly. Those yellow boxes represent property owners that will be impacted should this be the alternative that is moved forward. We want to bring your attention to both Sandalwood as well as Chateau Drive. In the other concepts, we recommended a roundabout at those 2 locations. However, this concept with the standard 5 lanes does not make that recommendation. And thus we are making a suggested recommendation to maintain the existing signalized intersection there at West Chateau Drive. Quickly, just to give you a snapshot of that condensed corner or that pinch point along the corridor. This is all the properties that will be impacted should this move forward. And I do want to highlight through our property engagement that I conducted, of the 65% of property owners that we met with 1 to 2, 3 times, they oftentimes resided within this area. And so I had an opportunity to meet with them, talk about, what the future holds should this concept move forward and what the timeline is going to look like. So while I would hesitate to say there are no surprises, but certainly many of these property owners are well aware that this project is moving forward. I just want to quickly recap what that cross section looks like. Moving along the corridor itself, I do want to draw your attention to Tolley Park. That's that other attractor along the corridor. This is also where we make another pedestrian enhancements for crossing. This is a hybrid beacon that we're making a suggested enhancement. This is to help facilitate those who are wanting access to Tolley Park. More importantly, facilitate those who are trying to continue on the Meridian pathway. This is also where we start to see the 5 Mile Creek. This 5 Mile Creek right now is opened. However, with this recommendation, we are suggesting that we tile it. Although in design, there is some considerations that maybe we can look to enhancing retaining wall to keep that daylighted. That is a design conversation, a conversation that will occur there later in design. Continuing along is where we conclude the project itself here at Ustick and Linder. No additional enhancements than what you're seeing reflected there, nor any additional enhancements there at the intersection. The concept 2, which is the preferred alternative moving forward, the estimated cost is $39.3 million. This does include the acquisition of 35 parcels. Concepts 1 and concept 2, concept 3. Concept 3 is at 37.1 million with acquisition of 27 parcels, and concept 1, which is existing 3 lanes, 17.5 million, and that includes acquisition of 3 parcels. Additional considerations as we move this project into the design phase, in concert with the City Meridian and some expressed concerns about the remnant parcels, we do want to continue that conversation into the design, where we'll discuss access management with those remnant parcels, as well as work with the city regarding deed restrictions to mitigate any issues that may arise. And lastly, want to address some of the stormwater facility enhancement opportunities that could occur if this project does move forward. Just want to quickly recap the next steps. So we're here September 11th for the pre-adoption work session. As I mentioned earlier, we will be taking a 14-day public comment period between September 12th and the 24th. And I'll be back before you on September 25th for the public hearing and the adoption consideration. This concludes my presentation. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Brooke. I've got a couple questions to kick us off. Do you mind, because it's been a while since we chatted about these concepts, could you remind us as to why folks were not supportive of concept? Is it A or 1? I can't, 1. With the 20% support, could you speak to the nuances of that number?
Certainly. So I just want to draw the slide itself, I think, gives you a good depiction. So concept 1, concept 3, some of the hesitation that we heard from the public certainly was the volume capacity, the ability to get through this space. There was some concerns with the roundabouts. Several of those expressed concerns that, should we make the enhancements for roundabouts at both Chateau and Sandalwood? They'd be the only roundabouts along this northwest corridor. Many of the folks expressed concerns about that. And lastly, with the actual shared use roads that we were making a suggestion for, some people expressed the concerns about commingling bikes and peds as well as vehicles in that space. And so a lot of folks were not necessarily keen to the idea of a shared use road. Many of the property owners that I've met with that are being impacted by this of the 65%, several of them are actually in support of the standard 5 lanes. They expressed that during the meetings themselves, with the exception of about 3 of them who did express concerns about, where are they to go afterwards because they're of older population. And so that's why we see with the 45.6%, the approval rate, concept 2 was the general population's preferred alternative.
Brooke, is there, because there wasn't any slide with data on like capacity and speaking to that concern. could you give us a rundown of current capacity and how the current segment is operating and how it would handle each of these concepts?
Certainly. And I'm going to lean to Ben to have him come up and speak to it. I do have them all written down, but I think Ben can give a better overview. Currently, as it's existing today, I will tell you, north and southbound, it is operating at a level of service C, which is, AM peak, and D at our PM peak. Ben, if that gave you enough time to get up to the podium, answer any additional questions about volume capacity. In our analysis, we did say the scenario of a 3-lane build would accommodate existing conditions and future conditions as it pertains to the standard 5 lanes. Ben, if you want to add to that.
Yes, Madam President, Ben Foch with HDR Engineering for the record. For the 3-lane build in 2050, we used Compass's 2050 model, and we estimated a level of service for both northbound and southbound traffic. Northbound traffic, in the PM peak hour is D, and southbound traffic is a level of service C. That was for the 3-lane build in 2050. For the 5-lane build in 2050, it was estimated at a level of service C for both northbound and southbound throughout the corridor.
So it just moves up 1 grade.
Yes, yeah, and D has been acceptable by ACHD. Like, that's typically the threshold that we see as acceptable. So there was some concern by the city of Meridian over the Compass model, but it did factor in the Linder Road overpass that is to be built. So they raised that concern, but we used the numbers that were given to us by Compass.
Ben, I just want to, you kind of went through really fast. So you, in that analysis, you are including numbers expected from the Linder overpass?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Hanson?
Just some more clarification on level of service. So today, level of service is what?
Today, level of service is C.
Is C.
Yeah.
And then with the expansion, it would still be at C.
Yes, in 2050.
In 2050. And we're talking about level of service at the 15-minute peak, the PM peak, AM peak.
Yeah, we're looking at peak hour.
Peak hour.
Peak
So-
hour, yeah. So
Okay.
AM and PM, and PM is slightly worse.
So this
general.
is something people always ask me about. Well, what the heck does level of service mean? So and translate that in terms of the 1.5 mile segment here for someone driving from one end to the other, what that would mean in terms of seconds.
We have some travel times calculated as well. So for the 3-lane in the worst condition in northbound in 2050, the travel time from start to finish over the 1.5 mile corridor was 4.5 minutes. And for the 5-lane build in 2050, it was 4 minutes.
4 minutes. So we're talking about 30 seconds.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
At the peak.
Yes, when I talk to residents of Meridian, they're not nearly as excited about the overpass. Folks in Cuna sure are, but they're excited at being able to move their vehicles from Meridian Road or 10 Mile onto Linder. What kind of consideration has been given for that type of a change?
Brooke, do you want to speak to this at all?
Yeah, Commissioner Goldthorpe, would you mind repeating your question?
Because a number of people are excited for this project because of the fact that they can stop using 10 Mile or Meridian Road and go over to Linder. I'm wondering what kind of consideration has been given by us to that eventual change.
It is taken into account that there are 2 adjacent roads that could provide some relief for this area. For the public's perception, I can't imagine this is one additional relief valve for that area. They can certainly utilize it. It is taken into consideration that we do have these adjacent roads with better connection to the interstate and was taken into account in our modeling.
And I will say, Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, the Compass model did show Linder Road from this section as a 3-lane road because that's what's in the current ACHD.
Oh, I understand all that stuff. I just wonder if any consideration was given to any specifics that I mentioned. And it doesn't sound like it was.
Commissioners, for the record, Krista Anselman, I just wanted to also jump in here for additional information with regards to this corridor. So we do have Linder Road in the master street map. The ultimate build out of Linder Road in this area is 5 lanes.
Yes.
It's just in the CIP for 3 and the modeling just looked at a 2050 horizon, but ultimate build out based on land use is 5. I just wanted to
And
make
I'm
sure that
glad
that was
for
also brought up.
Does that answer your question, Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Enough.
Enough? Okay. Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I have some questions about the properties that would be required to be purchased and the analysis, the data on the value of those properties. Would you be the right person, Ben, or? Okay, good. So I know the analysis, oh, you are, you're,
Oh, it's Brooke.
it's Brooke?
Oh, Brooke, sorry.
Brooke. Okay, he motioned. Okay, got
Okay,
it, got it.
pointed to her.
Up, up.
You're up there, Brooke.
Opposite the microphone.
So yeah, we just need some data because obviously, $39.3 million is a lot. And that's not even all the properties that are affected because properties similarly situated, but who actually have their driveway off the side roads, we would not consider for condemnation, or purchase. But we would the others. What is the difference in the value of those properties if we were to take them all as opposed to the ones that we've just designated? You can do a percentage, because my perception is that those folks would say, well, why is my neighbors, you're compensating them, you're going to purchase their house, but me, I have to deal with this new arterial next to me, and because my driveway takes it off of the side street, you're only going to take whatever of my yard, but not the road next to it. So there's that tricky thing. I think we have to be understand that the value of those properties should be considered. There may be a need to purchase those as well because the impacts are, except for the access to their driveway, the impacts would be comparable. Has there done an analysis what we're talking about? Is it 20% more, 50% more, 30% more? That analysis is
President.
important.
Madam President,
Madam-
sorry, Brooke, it's
Oh.
Diane Bevins, Deputy Director of Projects, to answer this right-of-way question. We have not done that deep dive of analysis on specific properties for this concept level, but once we get into design and the right-of-way acquisition process, there's an appraisal. We know exactly how close to the side of that house we're going to be, and if there's any damages. All of that will be worked out through negotiations with those individual property owners. In the past, if we're close even to the side of a house and that property owner approaches us to say, can you buy my property? We have accommodated that request. We just turn around and resell it after the project is complete. But we have accommodated that request if someone chooses to move instead of stay. And that will, again, we have to do an appraisal, understand the damages and proximity and all that.
But just to clarify, Diane, I appreciate that. We have done some analysis because we came up with an estimate of what it would cost to purchase the properties that are marked in hash marks on there. So we've done some preliminary analysis of those homes. And my assumption is they're all of roughly equivalent value. So it would just be a percentage of what additional cost might be required if we were to purchase or condemn those homes as well.
And I'll let Brooke answer that because I'm not sure that a number of other, number of parcels we're talking about that are at those corners. But there would be a cost because we would buy it at a certain price, and then it would be less property when we sold it again. But there would be some recouping of those costs in those scenarios.
Right. I have a question about value though, and one of the, and maybe Brooke can answer this, because obviously today those properties are producing property taxes. When we remove them, they no longer produce property taxes, but we don't count that as a public cost. Diane's shaking her head. No, we don't count that as a public cost. So even though those are going to be shifted to the public, and in some cases, probably Meridian will want to deal with them and do something with them. Their value as being a narrow lot probably wouldn't be what they are today as a home. we don't calculate any of those costs. So the loss of property taxes, even into 2050, when we're saying we need that extra 30 seconds. Okay.
And just kind of going back to some of my initial question, Brooke, you can probably answer. Could you speak to why there was a difference in reception from concept 2 to 3? And because I mean, I'm looking at this image and it looks like there is a tree in a median part of the way versus concept 3. Is that just continuous and there would not be any type of turn lane? Could you speak to just that particular detail between those two concepts?
Madam President and Commission. So in particular, what you're seeing here is images that are reflective of the pinch point corridor. That's kind of where we took a snippet of the corridor to show in the image. The landscape medians, the tree landscape medians, will be for the whole corridor in appropriate locations for both access management, in addition, traffic calming. So what you're seeing here is just a depiction of what that potentially could look like. In particular, why want concept 2, why concept 3 from the public? Concept 3, back to the point that those are shared use roads. Some of the feedback we received is that commingling between pedestrians and vehicles. There were some concerns. Even after we put in the concrete ribbon to suffice as a sidewalk space, there were still some concerns expressed with that. In addition, concept 3 had the roundabout suggested in it. And that roundabout, as we overwhelmingly heard from the public, was some concerns that here along this corridor, north and south, all of a sudden we have these 2 roundabouts. And some people said, you know what, I don't feel that they're very safe. Some people say that, you know, for pedestrians, they're not very safe. And so just gauging through all the comments that we received from the public, just the general raw data, there were expressed concerns from everywhere, from pedestrian facilities. They don't feel like they were enough to, you know, people trying to get from point A to point B the fastest they possibly can without the roundabout being in that space. So that was the comments, the raw comments that we received. But when we go back and we look in the data itself, what it's telling us, concept 2 was more well received by the general public and the property owners along the corridor.
Brooke, could you share, is there an example of a concrete ribbon and this type of shared use road elsewhere in the county?
So I can't really give you an example. I could go back and explore and see. A concrete ribbon is essentially, I guess, a Whitewater Park Boulevard may have had a concrete ribbon associated with it. It really is just a smooth surface like a sidewalk that doesn't have the curb and gutter.
I'm just trying to figure out, because I mean, hearing your points around folks are concerned that the facilities aren't going to feel as safe. I'm trying to like picture it in real life, or at least compare it to something that's similar to understand that how that might feel differently compared to concept number 2. Because obviously this is going to be a very expensive project, and in our housing crunch, it's every house matters, right? So I'm looking at the overall costs and impacts and how can we minimize those, in any way we can. So if Whitewater Park Boulevard is the closest real example of that, I appreciate that. So
yeah. And Madam President, I can follow up with some pictures to depict it a little bit better than what is the image that you see here on the screen in anticipation of the September 25th hearing.
I would really appreciate that. That would be great. Thank you. Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Brooke, first a question regarding 5 Mile Creek. Do we have some idea of the relative cost of burying that entire stretch of the creek in a new culvert as opposed to leaving it open? I know you talked about how there's discussion of going one way or the other. It would seem to me that that extent of a culvert should be pretty expensive. Do we have some idea of the relative costs?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, I'm going to ask Ben to come up here if he so happens to have it broken out without me digging through all my papers here. Specifically, it is, as you're seeing it here, this is folded into the $39 million estimate. Now, the retaining wall to mitigate and keep it daylighted That retaining wall, certainly in design, we can talk about it, but I suspect that expense will also be pretty significant. Ben, did we by chance break it out? And I don't have the actual broken down estimate in front of me readily available. Do you happen to have that number?
Madam President and Commissioner McKinney, yes, we do have that number broken out. I don't have it currently in front of me, but we could get it to you after the fact before the adoption meeting. It is a significant cost, you are correct. But to echo Brooke's point, a retaining wall would also would be a significant structure and a significant cost as well associated with that. But we can get you that value. I don't have it directly in front of me, but we have a fully broken down estimate of all the different construction items.
Okay, so if it were left open, retaining walls would absolutely be required. There's no way around that.
That's the current thought, but exploring, more options in design.
Okay. Well, and I recognize that culverts are expensive, but retaining walls, they have a cost as well. So I understand that. Well, let me just say give my 2 cents on this project. I think this is one of those where we have an unfortunate development pattern from the past with all those front-on driveways. And that's what's necessitating the really extensive amount of property acquisition that's going to be required for this project. But I cannot imagine that we would approve a concept that we know is going to give us level of service D when it's built. And likewise, if you have a choice between 3 options and the public 45% of them go for one of those 3 options, that's an overwhelming number, because anytime in a 3-way race to get 45% is quite high. And it shows that this 5-lane section makes sense. Furthermore, it's what the city wants, and the city, I think, is in the right ballpark on this. Commissioner Hansen often talks about the importance of working with cities and helping cities see their vision come through. I think a lot of times that's he's in favor of what the cities want when the cities agree with him, but when they don't, he's not quite as in favor. But anyway, I guess our general counsel has some words.
Before you go on, Steve, if that's okay, Brooke or Diane, question. Do we have any ballpark estimate of how much the purchasing of all of those homes is going to cost? Like a ballpark figure? Brooke, she's saying you might have that.
I may have that, Madam President, Commissioners. Let's see. I'll have to follow up in the next presentation because I don't have that. Oh, here we are. $18.8 million. And that does include relocation as well as market or assessed value and interest rate changes and so forth.
So we're talking about a nearly $60 million project.
No, the 18 is part of the.
Madam.
No, it's part of the 39.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I was like, wait, what?
It's the largest cost.
Okay, it's the largest cost. Oh, sorry, I missed that. Okay, got it. Thank you, Brooke. Steve, do you want
Madam
to?
President, I just wanted to follow up with the crossing of 5 Mile Creek. In most cases, the irrigation company, and I believe in that area it is Nampa Meridian, they have jurisdictional control over that facility. And we've had a history of requirements that irrigation companies put on us. And in most cases, we are in a position where we pretty much have to build what they tell us to build. So I just want you to know that we don't have really a lot of latitude in the type of facility that we build there. Much of it is we have to do it to get their approval.
Have they given their input on this?
Probably not until they get a design.
Okay.
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that we were talking about concept C or 3, about that concrete ribbon. I remember in the comparison or the example was given that we have Whitewater Boulevard with the concrete ribbon. And here in the last few months, we were told that Whitewater Boulevard is vastly underutilized compared to what we thought was going to happen when we built Whitewater Boulevard. I would hate to see us do something like that again here on Linder and create a pinch point where people are telling me right now they need someplace else to go besides Meridian Road or 10 Mile. And to make it so that wasn't the case, I think we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Commissioner Gold, did you have something?
Yeah, thanks, Madam President. So please clarify this if I'm wrong on this, but I had Meridian organized a task force after the crashes that involved kids being killed or injured out there. I thought I recall that there was some task force, and director's coming up, but I'm not sure of the status of that.
Madam President, Commissioner Gold, yes, they did. I sat on that task force as we reviewed all signalized intersections throughout the area.
So what was the outcome of that? Did they have takeaways that they made recommendations to the city, or?
Madam President, Commissioner Gold, yes, there was a report that came out with recommendations for each location. Our staff has that and is using it as part of our safety engineering team as we look at intersections, but yes, there was a report.
Okay. But it wasn't the kind of thing that was like, here's some patterns that can be, more broadly. Okay. That's what I thought I had recalled the conversation being. So thanks for the clarification.
And I think Commissioner Gold, like some of the notes that folks had, even though they didn't have like systematic like recommendations for us or the city to consider, it was more of a recognition that we need to be like how ACHD communicates about options, like including like what Brooke's done here, including like the landscape median is a really important design configuration that can support traffic safety and reduce some of the high speeds that they're seeing on 5-lane arterials. So I think that was one of the biggest like systematic takeaways that they had, which obviously Brooke has incorporated here, which is helpful.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Another question relating to the speed that you just mentioned. So I noticed in the report for this concept, it says that I believe it's the existing 85th percentile speed is 40 or 41 miles per hour. I'm just wondering if we have a comparison to an adjacent portion of Linder, as this is considered the choke point, how the 85th percentile compares.
Madam President, Commissioner Gold, I haven't looked at any of the anything north of Ustick. I didn't take that, I didn't delve deeper into their speed study. Ours is at 85th percent, so it's about 40 to 41 miles per hour. This is 35, it's posted at 35 miles per hour, and to give you a perspective. But at this pitch point in particular, that's our analysis. I have to dig in deeper to see what the other corridor segments, what their 85th percentile is. And I'd certainly be happy to bring that back at the 25th of September.
Great, I'd appreciate that.
Mhm.
Another question that I have is, or just I guess a clarification. I noticed in this report that it said that the council had voted in favor of concept 2, through a conversation with a Meridian staff member, and then also the letter that we received from Meridian, and that's happened during a work session. I think it was a conversation that, as the letter says, highlighted concept 2 as the favorite, but it was not an official vote of the council or official position of the city. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not overstating or misrepresenting the city's position on that.
Madam President, Commission, this was discussed at a work session of the City of Meridian Council. There was no official vote, as it was a work session. Certainly, we can modify the report to indicate that was a discussion piece, not necessarily an official vote, and certainly recognize that as being of concern expressed from the City of Meridian.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any other questions. Brooke, thank you for your presentation, and really curious to hear what the last round of public comment is, and look forward to seeing you later this month.
Madam President,
Commissioner
just want
Hanson?
to clarify, I actually support Meridian's preference. Commissioner McKinney indicated that I sort of have preferences to the cities. The cities know what they want. But I don't represent the city of Meridian. I don't represent City of Boise. I represent the taxpayers of part of the county. And I think the taxpayers are entitled to know what the costs are. And so I think it's really critical that the city of Meridian and the taxpayers know what the costs are. And we know that big projects come along and you have to put a lot of other projects on hold in certain parts of the county while you do those big projects. You know, we saw that around the building of the cycle track and the roundabouts near St. Luke's quite a number of years ago. And the agreement, Boise City said, that's going to be our #1 priority for 5 years. And it was paying back what was constructed there. So I get that. Now, this would take #1 priority for a number of years for Meridian, but if that's what they want, I think we should defer to them. But the taxpayers need to know what the overall costs are. And that the property owners in the other parts of the county get to set the priorities for where their taxes go. So I think it's really important that we say, yeah, this is Meridian's #1 priority, and understand what those costs are, because the value of those properties as they're producing income, property taxes today affects them too, because they're based on property taxes as well. That whole analysis and what the investment of this is in the increased value of the perhaps there's an economic increase in the value. People will reinvest in higher value activity. Meridian can do that. But I think ultimately we should defer to what Meridian's priorities are. And to the extent that's how much revenue is generated within Meridian and we are able to build that, that's the priority we should pursue, because that's Meridian's priority. Boise has their priorities, Eagle, Garden City, they each have their priorities, and I think it's critical that we respect those priorities.
Thanks, Commissioner Hanson. Thanks, Brooke. All right.
Commissioner Pickering.
Commissioner Gold.
We had some technical issues, so we do have a communications that somebody has been waiting and would like to address the commission.
Like, what is it on this item, Stacy, or a
It's-
different one?
It's just public
Oh, it's
communication.
just
What's
public-
Yeah, they
community?
didn't.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Mr. Hall?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please introduce yourself and state your name and address for the record, please.
Absolutely. My name is Jordan Hall. My address is 4906 North Quail Summit Place in Boise 83703.
Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you, Madam President, and the rest of the commission and board. I first want to take a moment to commend Commissioner Gold and Director Head for kind of dealing with my more recent communications. I represent as a HOA president and as a homeowner in Boise. We have had some I would say, exchanges with ACHD about the maintenance of our community up in Quail Ridge. We realize that we are an adjacent neighborhood that doesn't see heavy traffic. We are kind of out of sight, out of mind. Some of you may not even know where Quail Ridge exists. At the top of Hill and Collister, we're tucked away. The only real recognition to our neighborhood is we have the largest water feature in all of the county. We have a massive waterfall for whatever reason that tends to get every high school prom and homecoming photographed in front of our entry. But that's the significance of our little neighborhood up here in Polecat. But I found my initial process of getting some, I think, transparent and comprehensive responses from the staff at ACHD pretty challenging. And I did want to take a moment to recognize Commissioner Golden and the director for really, I think, taking personal time, even in the evenings, to speak with me so that we can better communicate with our neighborhood. Our initial inquiry really comes about, and I have a long email that I had drafted for both of them, but I won't take time because I know this is a little out of procedure, but we wanted to, and I just really wanted to press upon trying to ask this board and commission to help us bring some greater transparency and more defined process to how and when and what is communicated to constituents in various parts of the county as it relates to chip sealing. And I know most of you guys are going to roll your head and say, oh no, not this again, but I found it very challenging to find out very basic information of when our roads are qualified, how they're deemed qualified, what criteria is deemed as qualified. I have a couple talking points and I'm welcome to ask any questions, but I'll try to get through this really fast. I feel that the current process includes the pavement maintenance team, as I understand it, where you just have two gentlemen in a vehicle that drive around the roads and they go to the different zones and they do a quote unquote visual inspection and make a decision on which roads should be included in services that year. It's just a visual inspection as you drive across the road. So there's no formal report, there's no formal evaluation, there's no formal documentation, there's no scorecard whatsoever for any road that is actually granted chip sealing in this county. Millions of dollars are exhausted in chip sealing, and we have no formal accountability or transparency to the constituents of what criteria or what roads are picked and how they're picked on that criteria. It's just a visual inspection of two gentlemen in a vehicle. And that's concerning to me. I don't think that it's necessarily, I don't think there's any malice or harm doing there, but I do think that there is a need to stop and pause and say, as much feedback as you guys have been given recently from the public on chip sealing, there might be a benefit of some greater transparency of developing a tool that actually documents each zone or area as to what their criteria is, what their current score is, and where they would need to be to get, I think, services rendered in their neighborhood. For us, it's a mystery. Either your street's going to get it or your street's not going to get it. Sometime between 1 and 14 or plus so years. We live on a hill where there's grades between 22 and 31%. And for our neighborhood, it's been a great concern for us because we feel it's a public safety issue, not only for the roads and the conditions of our roads, but we've got a bunch of high school kids or younger that ride up and down our hill multiple times a week who cycle because our hill is known as being a QM road. I'm sorry, I'm not a cyclist, but these kids come up and down our road. We have multiple vehicles that come up and down our road to enter the Polecat Trail. We've found that the condition of the roads have not been as much or as good as we wanted them to be. In that process.
Jordan, we're at time. And since
Okay.
we're out of order with
Yep.
just how we're doing this process, I'm going to be a little tight on this one. Jordan, I really appreciate you powering through and sharing this information with us. We can always improve on how we communicate. I think this is, and you've given us some really good insight. I look forward to seeing that email with the detailed, especially like those solutions. I personally appreciate that. And so we'll continue to look into this and really appreciate you taking the time. And obviously I'm biased. I think, Commissioner Gold, you have great representation with Commissioner Gold, and Ryan's amazing. So we'll continue to work hard to figure this out. And we can't take any official action during public comment, but really appreciate you sharing these insights and looking forward to continuing to improve.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. All right. Moving on to item number 2. It's the 2025-2029 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan Comment Review. Welcome, Ms. Rebecca Phillips.
All right, so good afternoon, Madam President and Commissioners. For the record, Rebecca Phillips with the Planning Division. I'm here before you today to present what we've heard from the Public and Partner Agency comment period of the initial draft. So as always, here is the lovely snapshot you guys are familiar with of this year-long process as we wrap things up and approach adoption. To highlight the extensive outreach we've conducted this year, kickoff letters and prioritization lists were sent to our partners on December 13th. We held the partner agency kickoff meeting on January 9th. Our interactive map went live the same day, January 9th, which opened up public and partner comment period number 1. Public outreach was closed for that period on February 9th. Our partner outreach closed on March 15th. Notification was sent to all of our partners, 12,000 subscribers, and posted to social media outlets as well as a news release. That comment period ran 1 month until August 14th. And throughout both comment periods, staff remained available for questions, meetings, and phone calls, which leads us into our presentation today, reviewing what we've heard from the initial draft. So in total, we received 4 responses from our partners. We received responses from City of Boise, City of Eagle, City of Meridian, and Valley Regional Transit. We did get 360 individual responses for this period. 317 came from the interactive online map, and 22 of those comments were through the Engage survey platform. 15 email and TELUS 2 formal letters, 4 phone calls. And I did want to highlight that we received 364 total comments, and that is a 267% increase from last year's update.
Rebecca, before you move on, that's exciting. I want to highlight, have a question for you.
Mhm.
Is it standard to not get any responses from the Ada County Commission or the planning folks for folks from there? Do they not usually comment?
So I wouldn't
Okay,
say
understand.
it would be standard. We give all of our partners the ability ability to respond, and just the 4 this year is what we've gotten back. So
Madam President, for the record, again, Christy Enselman, Planning Supervisor. This is pretty standard. Each year, it can vary slightly who sends us response letters in. All of our partner agencies engage in the process when they submit their prioritization lists. And then when the initial draft comes out, we generally get 3 to 4 letters from our partners. We generally look at that as if we do not receive a response, then we're on track for the projects we have programmed for them. Thanks.
all right. So of the responses we received, they were overall positive and supportive of the projects programmed in the integrated 5-year plan. And so here is a breakdown of those comments by type. So project support, we received 107 comments showing support of a wide variety of projects in the integrated 5-year plan. Several hotspot projects with high support include Orchard Street realignment, Linder Road, Pine to Ustick, State Street and Pierce Park, and Nez Perce Orchard to Columbus. Moving on to project acceleration, we received 81 comments. That pattern of requests for all of the major arterial widening projects, of course, Linder, Lake Hazel, Amity, Maple Grove. And then another hotspot of acceleration requests were on the community program side for Collister Drive, State to Hill, Warm Springs Ave, Avenue C to Windsong, and the Taft Street, Sycamore Drive to 36th. In terms of project scoping comments, these were largely focused on the addition or expansion of bike and ped facilities, but we did have plenty suggesting different treatment types such as roundabouts versus signals. And commissioners, as you can see here, for the purpose of reporting, we do break these comments down to individual types. However, generally when a person is making a comment on project acceleration or scope, for instance, it does indicate a general level of project support in one fashion or another. So, and as always, we will definitely share these comments with our partners.
Rebecca, can you speak to like the 29 comments that were not supportive of projects? Like what was the general theme with those?
Yeah, so yeah, I can speak to those. We did have several folks commenting on implementing bike lanes or bikeway signage in certain areas along certain corridors. We did have a good chunk of feedback that showed low support of State Street 14th to 8th, for instance. That was one of the main hotspots for not supportive. Otherwise, it was pretty hit and miss throughout the whole plan.
Thanks. Commissioner McKinney, did you have something?
Yeah, I did. Also, I'm interested, the new project requests, 7 of those. I'm curious to know a little more about those.
Yeah, certainly. So those requests were suggesting different areas for pedestrian bridges. We did have like different sidewalk gaps that people were bringing to our attention. And there was definitely a hotspot of intersection improvement suggestions, like a roundabout versus, or I'm sorry, not a roundabout, but different improvement suggestions for intersections. So for instance, one was Eagle Road and Fairview. And then we had Ada and Highway 44 that received a lot of new project requests too.
Okay.
Any further questions on this slide? Okay. So now to go over what we've heard from our partners, we just wanted to briefly highlight a couple of the key items from those responses that we received. From City of Boise, they express their support with 15th and 16th. Americana, Emerald DeFort, and of course, they are requesting for us to assign a design and construction year. 8th Street Bike Facility, they were requesting that we assign a construction year as always. And Victory Road, Cloverdale to 5 Mile. So they did want us to request that delay consideration. And Boise Hills interim treatment, that is a sidewalk gap that's along Boise Hills. They're asking for an interim treatment before we can begin the corridor project, and State Street corridor design advancement of those 2 projects mentioned. For a City of Meridian, they expressed overall support of the Linder Road overpass moving forward on the current timeline. And they had mentioned Black Cat Road, Franklin to Cherry Lane, and adding that back into the plan. And they did highlight the deferred roadway and intersection and community program projects. So for Valley Regional Transit, their main focus was the State Street corridor design advancement as well, with the listed projects below. And from City of Eagle, we did receive a response of support, so they didn't indicate any changes. So commissioners, before you are the recommended project changes to the plan. They include adding a few projects into the plan for design or concept, as well as several project accelerations. As you've heard, we did have a very robust outreach throughout this year-long development process, and these recommendations are a direct outcome to what we've heard from our partners and the public. Commissioners, with your support, these changes will be implemented into the map, which will be released to the public and our partners this afternoon for the last round of public outreach leading up to the adoption hearing. And we can take a pause on this slide, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I think this looks really good, Rebecca, but happy to.
No questions? Okay.
Go for it.
So in speaking of changes, I would also like to highlight several more additions we have added to the integrated 5-year process this year, such as the new tab layer added to the interactive map, which includes all of the ACHD identified projects, and the new prioritization ranking webpage, which both encompass our collective vision to make this process more transparent for our community. Additionally, we have adjusted several project descriptions as a result of some of your feedback from last week. We are looking at more ways to utilize our chip sealing efforts to address and identify restriping opportunities, and we will also be coordinating directly with our safety team on several projects that may be better suited for implementation through that avenue as well. We listed some examples there, and I can speak to the woman who came in here earlier about that McMillan sidewalk area that is being considered through staff right now as we speak. Any questions on this slide?
No, thanks, Rebecca.
Okay. So, and then finally, this leads us to the next steps. Today, we're before you with the all of the comment review. And so this afternoon, we'll be releasing this final draft to the public. We will go through a 2-week comment period after this release this afternoon, and that will bring us back to September 25th, where we hope to adopt the 25-29 integrated 5-year plan. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
We've come a long way in just a few short weeks. Way to go, Christy and Rebecca. Commissioner Hanson.
Just want to clarify, is this the updated information on the interactive map now?
This information
This afternoon.
This
So
afternoon.
when someone goes in and say, oh, what good, it sounds like they can click and find that the adjustments that you've described are on the new. Okay.
Yep,
interactive
certainly
map.
those will
That's
be.
where most people are going these days anyway.
Yeah, yep, they'll be added and released this afternoon.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
For the back of the room, aren't you glad you came today?
Yeah, thanks for sticking around. Any other questions or thoughts or comments for staff? Great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, with that, we'll see you all next week.